Education reform has been discussed for many years and has gone under many different changes. The first school started in America was the Boston Latin School in 1635 and was designed for sons of certain social classes who were destined for leadership positions in the church, state, or in the courts. In that same year, the first free school of Virginia was opened. However, education in the southern colonies was more typically provided in the home by parents or tutors. In between 1783 and 1785, Daniel Webster writes a grammatical institute of the English language, which would later turn into the dictionary we know today. In 1801, James Pillins invents the modern blackboard, and in 1821, the first public high school, Boston English High School, opens. In 1829, the New England Asylum for the Blind, now the Perkins School for the Blind, opens in Massachusetts, becoming the first school in the U.S. for the children with disabilities. In 1837, 80 students arrive at Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, the first college for women in the U.S. Likewise, the African American Institute, later called the Institute for Colored Youth, opens in Cheney, Pennsylvania, now called Cheney University. It is the oldest institution of higher learning for African Americans. In 1839, the first state-funded school specifically for teacher education opens in Lexington, Massachusetts. In 1896, the Supreme Court ruling in the Plessy v. Ferguson makes separate but equal policies legal. It becomes a legal precedent used to justify many other segregation laws, including separate but equal education. In 1909, in order to improve high school graduation rates, the Columbus, Ohio School Board authorized the creation of junior high schools. Indianola Junior High School opens that fall and becomes the first junior high school in the United States. 1929, Jean Piaget, The Children's Conception of the World, is published. His theory of cognitive development becomes an important influence in American developmental psychology and education. 1954. On May 17th, the U.S. Supreme Court announces its decision in case of Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, ruling that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal, thus overturning its previous ruling in 1896, case of Plessy v. Ferguson. Brown v. Board of Education is actually a combination of 5 different cases from different parts of the country. It is a historic first step in the long, still unfinished journey toward equality in United States education. 1956, Bloom's taxonomy divides the cognitive domain into 6 levels: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis. 1957, federal troops enforce integration in Little Rock, Arkansas, as the Little Rock Nine enroll at Central High School. 1965, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, is passed on April 9th. Part of Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty improves and provides federal funds to help low-income students, which results in the initiation of educational programs such as Title I and bilingual education. 1972, Title IX of the Educational Amendments of 1972 becomes law. Though many people associate this law with only girls' and women's participation in sports, Title IX prohibits discrimination based on sex in all aspects of education. 1977, the Apple computer, now Apple Inc., introduces the Apple II, which is one of the most successful personal computers. It and its offspring, the Apple III, become popular in schools as students begin to learn with computer games such as Oregon Trail and Odell Lake. 1989. The University of Phoenix establishes their online campus, which is the first to offer online bachelor's and master's degrees. It becomes the largest private university in North America. 1991. The Smartboard Interactive Whiteboard is introduced by Smart Technologies. 1994 and 1995, whiteboards find their way into the United States classrooms, increasing numbers, and begin to replace the blackboard. In 2001, the controversial No Child Left Behind Act is approved by Congress and signed into law by President George W. Bush on January 8, 2002. The law, which reauthorizes the ESEA of 1965 and replaces the Bilingual Education Act of 1968, mandates high-stakes student testing, holds schools accountable for student achievement levels, and provides penalties for schools that do not make adequate yearly progress toward meeting the goals of the No Child Left Behind Act. So why did we just walk through the education system's history when today's students walk into the public, private, or chartered school somewhat ready to learn about math, science, or social studies, and language arts? Why didn't I just say there's a need to change in the education system today to benefit the children of tomorrow? It's easy. The changes I just explained to you happened out of necessity, and out of people saying the needs need to be more for the care of students that have disabilities, or that all schools have to have the same accessibility to different resources, or that a school cannot limit a child from going to school based upon skin color or sex. So what's the next important change to happen in the American education system? It's quite simple, and it comes down to inspiring children to learn. Many people have had teachers in the past, or even the present, that have made coming to class much easier than some of the teachers that they might have had. To an extent, the teachers that got you to class were because they wanted you to be there, and they inspired you to be there. Instead of saying, turn to page 343 in your math textbook, today we'll be learning about the order of an equation. They made the lesson interesting and memorable. In 4th grade, my teacher told us the story about his dear Aunt Sally at Thanksgiving, how she was just farting left and right. Well, this fit perfectly into the lesson because every time his dear Aunt Sally would fart, he would say to his wife, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." And this inspired me to learn the order of operations, rather than to memorize how to solve the equation, and also, I am still able to remember how much fun that lesson was. Before lunch, most classrooms will do 3 to 4 activities based on different curriculum hitting different state standards. These standards allow for the entire state to be tested on an even plane and see competency in different school districts. This system needs to be expanded so that teachers may be able to have the freedom in the classroom to inspire children to learn. My vision for the future classroom is to inspire children to learn by introducing lessons that are interactive to the student based upon their needs, rather than having the same stock lessons for future lessons or future classrooms. Although this provides to be a large challenge for the teacher of the classroom, the idea of the classroom is to increase the students' attendance rates and also to challenge them to push further with their own education. In this type of classroom, teachers will need more assistance because rather than dedicating strictly 1 hour a day to math, there's a beginning block of 1 hour and then the ability to have students push beyond that lesson so that they encourage themselves to learn. This system will work by having children use an intense spiral curriculum that includes all of the subjects. For instance, students that have more math focus will be given the opportunity to push beyond what they're learning. In a 4th grade classroom, typically they're using simple equations to solve for x and also are beginning to do long division. More often than not, these are children who can learn these lessons. Students in the math and science area are encouraged to push beyond what is taught, and is not limited to these subjects because these fields are constantly changing and have new discoveries. Students who are more able to learn the languages would be encouraged to step into another language such as Spanish or German or French, or if it's able for them to go into maybe Chinese or something. And then they'd also be challenged to read more challenging books. Likewise, students who prefer to learn about history would be encouraged to learn more about the connections between different cultures rather than the different events. Looking at events strictly, students do not learn about comprehension and they do not synthesize what might have happened. In this classroom, students who are able to conceptualize different relationships, they would be challenged to think of why different historical figures did what they did. The main idea behind this curriculum is to have students push beyond what is expected of them, and by having them push in areas that they find interesting rather than having them pull back to be with the classroom. Much like the gears in a clock or a car, their students are interlocked, continuing pushing forward to help each other to achieve the common goal of learning more in their education system. The teacher is like the battery of the watch or the car. Without the battery, there's no drive, there's no ability to go further. But if the teacher encourages them to push further, you don't know where you're going to go. Thank you.